Picture this: crystal chandeliers, designer dresses, billionaires sipping champagne. And in the middle of it all, red wine slowly dripping down a black dress like blood. The cameras flashed. The crowd laughed. They expected tears. They expected rage. What they got instead was something they never saw coming: a masterclass in power, delivered in complete silence. This is the night one woman burned down a billion-dollar empire without raising her voice. Welcome to Voice of Granny. While you are here, hit the subscribe button and comment your view on the story and where you watching from. Let me tell you about a night that changed everything. A night when silence spoke louder than screams, and dignity became the sharpest weapon in the room. It happened in Miami at the Ocean Pearl Hotel. Picture this: a grand ballroom filled with crystal chandeliers, marble floors so shiny you could see your reflection, and hundreds of people dressed like they owned the world. Because, honestly, some of them did. This wasn't just any party. This was the kind of event where million-dollar deals happened over champagne, where a handshake could change your life, and where everyone was watching everyone else. Every smile had a purpose. Every conversation was a chess move. In the center of all this sparkle and power stood Maya Chin. Now let me tell you about Maya. She was the CEO and founder of Chin Digital Systems, a tech company she built from absolutely nothing. We're talking about a woman who started in a tiny apartment with just a laptop and a dream. 10 years later, she was standing in that ballroom because she'd just closed the biggest deal of her life. $3 billion. Yes, you heard that right. $3 billion with a B. She'd just signed a partnership with the Anderson Corporation, one of the most powerful family businesses in the country. This deal was supposed to be her crowning moment, the thing she'd worked her entire life to achieve. Tonight was supposed to be her victory lap. Maya stood there in a simple black dress, not dripping in diamonds like the others, but carrying herself with quiet confidence. She'd earned her place in that room through hard work, sleepless nights, and refusing to give up when everyone told her she'd fail. She didn't inherit wealth. She didn't marry into power. She built it with her own two hands. But here's the thing about rooms filled with people who were born into money. Sometimes they forget that success comes in different packages. Sometimes they can't recognize power when it doesn't look exactly like them. The whispers started small. You know how it goes. One person leans to another, covers their mouth with their champagne glass, and says something just loud enough for those nearby to hear. Who invited her? She seems out of place, doesn't she? I heard she came from nothing. Can you imagine? The words floated through the air like poison disguised as perfume. Polite on the surface, cruel underneath. Maya heard some of it. She always did. But she'd learned a long time ago that dogs bark at what they don't understand. She kept her head high and her smile steady. For a while, the evening went smoothly. Business partners shook her hand. Photographers took pictures. A few genuine people congratulated her success. Maya began to relax, thinking maybe, just maybe, tonight would end well. That's when she appeared. From the top of the grand staircase, moving like she owned not just the room, but the entire world, came Jessica Anderson, the sister of the billionaire who'd just partnered with Maya. Jessica was draped in a designer gown that probably cost more than most people's cars, covered in jewelry that caught the light with every step, and wearing an expression that mixed boredom with barely hidden disgust. The crowd parted for her automatically. That's what money does. It creates space without asking. Jessica's eyes locked onto Maya from across the room. And let me tell you, when someone looks at you with that particular combination of curiosity and contempt, you feel it in your bones. It's the look of someone who's decided you're beneath them before you've even opened your mouth. She glided across the ballroom floor, her heels clicking with purpose. In her perfectly manicured hand swirled a glass of red wine, deep crimson like blood, catching the chandelier light as she moved. When she reached Maya, she stopped just a little too close, invading personal space in that way powerful people do when they want you to feel small. "Oh," Jessica said, her voice sweet as honey with poison mixed in. "You must be my brother's new partner." The pause before the word partner was deliberate, calculated. It said everything she wanted to say without actually saying it. Maya smiled politely, the way you do when you're trying to keep peace. "Yes, I'm Maya Chin. It's a pleasure to meet you." "How? Interesting," Jessica continued, tilting her head like she was examining something strange in a museum. "My brother has such adventurous taste in business these days. So willing to take risks." The insult was wrapped in compliment paper, but everyone nearby could smell what it really was. A few people had stopped their conversations to watch. You know how crowds can sense drama before it even happens? The air got thicker. Anticipation hung like humidity before a storm. Maya's smile didn't falter, but something flickered in her eyes. I believe success speaks for itself, she said calmly. The numbers don't lie. Oh, numbers, Jessica laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Anyone can play with numbers. But class? Breeding? Those can't be bought, darling. Some of us are born to these rooms. Others, she gestured vaguely at Maya, are just visiting. The words landed like slaps. Around them, some people looked away uncomfortably. Others leaned in, eager for the show. This was the ugly truth about these kinds of gatherings. They're beautiful on the surface, but underneath, they're often just sophisticated bullying dressed in expensive clothes. Maya took a slow breath. She'd faced worse in her life. She'd overcome poverty, discrimination, and countless people who doubted her. She wasn't going to let some spoiled rich woman break her composure. I built my company from nothing, Maya said quietly but firmly. I earned my seat at this table. I didn't inherit it. The words hung in the air for a moment. Direct. Honest. True. And that's when Jessica's face changed. The fake sweetness vanished, replaced by pure venom. Because here's what entitled people hate most. Being reminded that they didn't earn what they have. You built a table? Jessica stepped even closer, her voice dropping to something dangerous. Sweetie, you're just a guest at ours. Then, in one smooth motion that seemed to happen in slow motion, Jessica tilted her wrist. The wine glass tipped, and that deep red liquid poured out, splashing across Maya's shoulder, running down her black dress like blood, dripping onto the pristine marble floor. The entire ballroom gasped. It was that sharp, collective intake of breath that happens when everyone sees something shocking at the exact same time. For one frozen second, nobody moved. The wine kept dripping. Drip, drip, drip. The only sound in a room full of hundreds of people. Then came the laughter. First nervous and scattered, then louder as people realized no one was going to stop Jessica. The laughter of people who were relieved they weren't the target, grateful they weren't the ones being humiliated. Camera phones appeared like magic. Flash after flash. Everyone wanted to capture this moment. The moment Maya Chun, the self-made CEO, got put in her place by real money, real power, real privilege. Let me tell you what happens in moments like these. Time does something strange. It slows down and speeds up at the same time. You become hyper-aware of everything. The smell of the wine. The whispers growing louder. The heat of shame creeping up your neck. The eyes. Oh God, all those eyes staring at you. Maya stood there, wine dripping down her shoulder, soaking into her dress. In that moment, everyone in that room expected something. They expected her to cry, to shout, to storm out in humiliation, or maybe to shrink, to apologize, to somehow accept that she deserved this. That's what usually happens, right? The underdog gets humiliated, and they either fight back messily or they leave quietly, and either way, the powerful people get to feel superior. They get to go home with a story about the woman who couldn't handle their world. Jessica stood there with a smile playing on her lips, looking at Maya like she was a stain that needed to be cleaned up. She didn't even pretend it was an accident. Oh dear, Jessica said, her voice dripping with fake concern that was somehow more insulting than the wine itself. I'm so sorry. I didn't see you there. She paused, letting her next words sink in. You blend into the background so easily. More laughter rippled through the crowd. Cruel, hollow laughter that had nothing to do with humor and everything to do with relief that they weren't the ones being targeted. Some people even pulled out their phones to record, because in our world, humiliation has become entertainment. One woman whispered to her companion, "She won't come back from this. She's done." Another voice said, "I knew she didn't belong here." The comments floated through the air like daggers, each one meant to cut a little deeper. This wasn't just about wine anymore. It was about power. It was about reminding someone where they supposedly belonged. It was about putting an outsider back in her place. Maya's assistant, a young man named David who'd been standing nearby, rushed forward with napkins, his face pale with horror. "Ms. Chun, But Maya held up one hand, stopping him. Her face was completely calm. Not the calm of someone in shock, but the calm of someone making a decision. A very important decision. She didn't grab the napkins. She didn't wipe away the wine. She just stood there, perfectly still, letting it drip. And in that stillness, something shifted in the room. People stopped laughing as quickly as they'd started, confused by her lack of reaction. Then Maya reached into her small purse and pulled out her phone. Her movements were slow, deliberate, almost graceful. Like a pianist preparing to play a piece she'd practiced 1,000 times. The crowd watched, confused. Was she calling security? Calling for her car? Calling someone to cry to? Their confusion was almost funny, if you think about it. They couldn't understand why she wasn't falling apart. Jessica crossed her arms, amused. What are you going to do? Post about it? Sue me? Good luck with that, sweetheart. Do you have any idea who my family is? Maya didn't answer. She simply looked at her phone's screen, her expression unreadable. She scrolled once. Tapped twice. Then she lifted the phone to her ear. The ballroom had gone so quiet you could hear the ice shifting in people's glasses. Everyone was watching now. Even the waiters had stopped moving. Maya's lips moved and one word came out. Just one single word, spoken so softly that only the people closest to her could hear it clearly. Execute. That was it. One word. She didn't yell. She didn't explain. She just said that one word and lowered the phone. Then she slipped it back into her purse as calmly as if she'd just checked the time. Jessica laughed, but it sounded uncertain now. What was that supposed to be? Some kind of dramatic moment. Maya looked at her with eyes that were completely steady. When she spoke, her voice was quiet, but it carried across the silent room. You just cost your family $3 billion. What? Jessica's smile faltered. The wine you spilled? Maya continued, her tone almost conversational. It triggered the ethics clause in our contract. Your family just violated our partnership agreement's behavioral standards. The deal is terminated. Effective immediately. Jessica's face went from amused to confused to angry in about 3 seconds. You can't do that. I already did. At first, nobody believed it. It seemed too dramatic, too perfect, too much like something from a movie. But then the phone started buzzing. Not just one or two, but dozens of them all at once. That distinctive vibration sound, multiplied across a ballroom full of executives and investors. People pulled out their devices, their faces changing as they read their screens. Confusion turned to shock. Shock turned to panic. You could watch it spread like a wave across the room. Someone near the bar gasped. A woman in a silver dress grabbed her husband's arm and pointed at her phone. A group of men in suits huddled together, all staring at the same headline. Then the murmurs started, growing louder by the second. Is this real? It just posted. Chin Digital Systems just. The whole deal. $3 billion? The news was spreading faster than fire in dry grass. Within 2 minutes, every person in that ballroom knew. Within 5 minutes, the whole world would know. Because Maya hadn't just made a phone call. She'd authorized a press release that her team had been holding, ready to go at a moment's notice. A press release that was now appearing on every major news site, every financial platform, every social media channel. The headline was simple and devastating. Breaking. Chin Digital Systems terminates $3 billion partnership with Anderson Corporation, citing ethics violations. The statement beneath it was just as clean and sharp. Effective immediately, Chin Digital Systems is withdrawing from its partnership agreement with Anderson Corporation due to violations of our company's integrity and dignity standards. We do not conduct business with organizations that tolerate discriminatory behavior at any level. This decision is final and non-negotiable. It was signed by Maya Chin herself, timestamped just minutes ago, and verified across all official channels. Let me tell you about the moment when power shifts. It doesn't happen slowly. It doesn't give warnings. 1 second, you're on top of the world, and the next, the ground disappears beneath your feet. Jessica's phone buzzed in her designer clutch. She ignored it at first, still trying to process what Maya had just said. But then it buzzed again. And again. And again. Like an alarm that wouldn't stop. Around her, the atmosphere in the ballroom had completely changed. The laughter had died like someone had turned off a switch. Now there was chaos. Excited, nervous, shocked chaos. Executives were frantically making phone calls. Investors were gathering in tight circles, speaking in urgent whispers. Reporters who'd been there to cover a charity gala suddenly realized they were standing in the middle of the business story of the year. Maybe the decade. Then came the stampede. People rushing toward Maya, not to mock her anymore, but to understand. To get her side of the story. To position themselves on the right side of history, now that the tides had turned. But before anyone could reach her, a voice cut through the noise like a knife. Maya! Everyone turned. Striding across the ballroom came Richard Anderson himself, Jessica's brother, the billionaire CEO whose company had just lost $3 billion in the time it takes to drink a glass of wine. He was a tall man in his 50s, silver-haired, usually composed, the kind of man who was used to being the most important person in any room. But right now, he looked like someone had just punched him in the stomach. His face was red. His jaw was clenched. His phone was in his hand, and you could see his knuckles were white from gripping it so hard. He stopped right in front of Maya, breathing hard. For a second, you could see him trying to decide how to handle this. Should he be angry? Apologetic? Commanding? He chose anger. What the hell is this? He shoved his phone toward her face, showing her the same headlines everyone else was reading. This is insane. This is a misunderstanding. You can't just. I can, Maya interrupted quietly. And I did. Over a glass of spilled wine? His voice was rising now, losing that controlled executive tone. You're throwing away a $3 billion deal over an accident? Maya's expression didn't change. It wasn't an accident. Your sister deliberately humiliated me in front of hundreds of people. She made it clear what she thinks of me, and by extension, what your family thinks of people like me. That's ridiculous. Jessica was just, he glanced at his sister, who was still standing there, looking pale now instead of smug. She didn't mean anything by it. She meant exactly what she said, Maya replied. Her voice was still calm, but there was steel underneath it. And your company's code of conduct, which I read very carefully before signing, has clear language about discriminatory behavior and professional standards. Section 4, paragraph 2, specifically states that any representative of Anderson Corporation must maintain dignity and respect in all professional settings. Your sister violated that. In front of witnesses. On camera. Richard's mouth opened and closed. He looked like a man trying to find an argument and realizing there wasn't one. Because she was right. The contract was airtight. His lawyers had written it that way, never imagining it could be used against them. He struggled for words. This is an overreaction. We can fix this. We can make this right. Maya shook her head slowly. Some things can't be fixed with money, Mr. Anderson. Some things are about principle. Principle? He almost laughed, but it came out bitter. You're going to lecture me about principle while destroying jobs? This partnership would have created thousands of positions. You're hurting innocent people to make a point. And this is where Maya's calm broke just slightly. Not into anger, but into something deeper. Something more real. Don't you dare, she said, her voice low and intense. Don't you dare try to make me the villain here. I built my company thinking about those jobs every single day. I worked until 2 a.m. for months to make this deal fair for everyone. I cared about those people more than you ever did, because I know what it's like to need a job, to struggle, to be treated like I don't matter. She stepped closer to him, and even though he was taller, richer, more powerful on paper, somehow she seemed bigger in that moment. Your sister didn't just spill wine on me, Maya continued. She tried to spill my dignity, my worth, everything I've built. She tried to remind me, and everyone here, that people like me don't really belong in rooms like this. And you know what? She was right. Richard looked confused. What? I don't belong in rooms like this, Maya said clearly. Because rooms like this are filled with people who think money means they can treat others like garbage. People who think power gives them the right to humiliate someone for entertainment. I don't want to belong here. I want to build something better. The ballroom had gone dead silent again. You could have heard a pin drop on that marble floor. Every phone was pointed at them now. Every camera was capturing this moment. Richard's face cycled through emotions. Anger, frustration, and finally, something that looked almost like fear. Because he was starting to realize what was really happening here. This wasn't just about a canceled deal. This was about reputation, legacy, the story that would follow his family forever. He tried one more time, his voice quieter now, almost pleading. Maya, please, think about this. You'll regret this decision. Maya looked at him for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft but absolutely certain. The only thing I regret, she said, is that I didn't see who your family really was before I signed anything. Thank God for that glass of wine. It saved me from a much bigger mistake. Richard's face went completely pale. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. What could he say? She'd outmaneuvered him completely. Legally, morally, publicly. Behind him, Jessica finally found her voice. This is ridiculous. You're destroying a major partnership because your feelings got hurt? How childish. How? How powerful. Maya turned her attention to Jessica now. Is that the word you're looking for? Because you're right. This is powerful. This is what happens when you underestimate someone because they don't look like you, sound like you, or come from where you come from. Jessica's mouth snapped shut. The smug expression was completely gone now, replaced by something that looked a lot like panic. Maya looked around the ballroom, at all those faces staring at her. Some looked shocked. Some looked impressed. Some looked scared. Good. They should be scared. Not of her, but of their own behavior. I need to say something, Maya said, her voice carrying across the space. Not just to them. She gestured at Richard and Jessica. But to everyone here. She didn't walk to the stage. She didn't grab a microphone. She just stood there in the middle of the floor, wine still staining her dress, and spoke. When I came here tonight, she began, I was excited, nervous, proud. I'd worked my entire life for a moment like this. For recognition. For acceptance into rooms like this one. People were putting down their champagne glasses, giving her their full attention. But standing here now, with wine on my dress and cameras in my face, I realized something, Maya continued. I don't need acceptance from people who measure worth by bank accounts and family names. I don't need approval from people who think kindness is a weakness and cruelty is a joke. Her eyes swept the crowd, and more than a few people looked away, ashamed. Some of you laughed tonight, Maya said. When I was humiliated, you laughed. You pulled out your phones. You whispered to your friends. You were entertained by my pain. The silence was so heavy it felt like it might crush everyone in the room. But here's what I want you to understand. Maya's voice grew stronger. Power isn't about who can hurt who. It's not about who has more money or more connections. Real power is about choices. And tonight, I chose dignity over dollars. I chose self-respect over status. And I chose to walk away from people who will never understand that some things are more valuable than a billion-dollar contract. Someone in the back started clapping. Just one person at first. Then another. Then more. Within seconds, half the ballroom was applauding. Not the fake, polite applause of social events, but real, genuine appreciation. The other half stood frozen, realizing they'd been on the wrong side of history. Maya didn't smile. She didn't bow. She simply nodded once, acknowledging the moment, and then turned toward the exit. Let me tell you about what happened after Maya walked out of that ballroom. Because that's where the story gets really interesting. That's where we see what dignity really costs, and what it's really worth. As Maya's heels clicked across the marble floor toward the exit, the crowd parted for her like water. Nobody tried to stop her. Nobody dared. There was something in the way she moved, in the straightness of her spine despite the wine stain on her shoulder, that commanded a respect none of them had given her before. David, her assistant, rushed to follow her, but she turned back and shook her head. Stay, she said quietly. Watch what happens. Take notes. We'll need them. Then she was gone, through the golden doors and into the Miami night. The moment those doors closed behind her, the ballroom exploded. Not with laughter this time. With panic. With phone calls. With the kind of chaos that happens when billions of dollars start moving in the wrong direction. Richard Anderson was already on his phone with his board of directors. His face had gone from red to gray, that color people turn when they realize how bad things really are. I don't care what it takes, he was saying. Get our legal team. Get PR. Get everyone. We need to fix this now. But here's the thing about modern scandals. They move at the speed of light. While Richard was trying to manage the crisis, the internet was already on fire. The video footage from the gala, shot by dozens of guests on their phones, was spreading everywhere. TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. Within an hour, the clip of Jessica pouring wine on Maya had been viewed 10 million times. By morning, it would be 400 million. And people were not on Jessica's side. The comments rolled in like a tsunami. This is disgusting. Imagine thinking you can treat someone like this. Maya Chun is a queen for walking away from $3 billion. Money can't buy class, and this family just proved it. I've canceled all my services with Anderson Corporation. I will not support this behavior. That last one was the most dangerous kind, because it wasn't just random people commenting. It was customers, partners, employees. By midnight, #StandWithMaya was trending worldwide. By 2 a.m., major news networks were picking up the story. By dawn, it was the headline on every major newspaper in the country. CEO terminates $3 billion deal after public humiliation at gala. The glass of wine that cost $1 billion empire. Maya Chen chooses dignity over deal in shocking business move. Meanwhile, Maya sat in her penthouse apartment overlooking Biscayne Bay, still in her wine-stained dress, watching the sunrise. Her phone was buzzing constantly, messages of support, interview requests, partnership offers, but she'd turned off the sound. She just sat there, drinking tea, processing everything that had happened. David had sent her hourly updates through the night. 1 a.m., Anderson Corp stock down 8% in after-hours trading. 2:30 a.m., 3 major investors publicly withdrawing support. 4 a.m., employees starting petition demanding leadership change. 5:30 a.m., Richard Anderson's resignation rumors circulating. Maya didn't feel happy about any of it. This wasn't about revenge for her. It never had been. It was about drawing a line in the sand and saying, this far and no further. She thought about her mother, who'd worked 3 jobs to put Maya through college, who'd cleaned houses for families that probably looked a lot like the Andersons, who'd taught Maya that dignity wasn't something anyone could take from you. You could only give it away. I didn't give it away, Mom, Maya whispered to the sunrise. I didn't give it away. By 9 a.m., Maya arrived at her office, a sleek building in downtown Miami that she'd designed herself. Her entire staff was waiting, filling the lobby with applause as she walked in. These weren't fake congratulations. These were people who'd worked beside her for years, who knew what she'd sacrificed to build this company, and who understood exactly what last night had meant. Her CFO, a brilliant woman named Patricia, pulled her aside. Maya, we need to talk numbers. The Anderson deal was 40% of our projected revenue for next year. We need to discuss how we're going to. We're going to be fine, Maya said calmly. But, Patricia, we're going to be fine. And she was right. By noon, Maya's phone had 15 missed calls from other corporations. Companies that had watched what happened and thought, that's someone I want to do business with. That's someone with actual values. By 2 p.m., 3 new partnership offers had come in, each one comparable to or larger than the Anderson deal. Companies wanted to align themselves with Maya's story, with her brand, with what she represented. But the most important call came at 4 p.m. from Richard Anderson himself. Maya stared at her phone screen for a long moment before answering. She put it on speaker so Patricia and David could hear. Hello, Richard. Maya. His voice sounded tired, defeated. I'm calling to. I want to. He struggled for words. I'm sorry. For what my sister did. For what I said. For all of it. Maya waited. She'd learned that silence was often more powerful than words. I've spent the last 16 hours watching my company fall apart, Richard continued. We've lost $500 million in market value. 7 major clients have pulled their contracts. Our reputation it's destroyed. And you know what the worst part is? What's that? Maya asked quietly. We deserved it. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. We absolutely deserved it. Jessica's behavior was inexcusable. My response was inexcusable. The culture we built that made people think that kind of behavior was okay? All inexcusable. Maya still said nothing. I'm not calling to ask you to reverse your decision, Richard said. That ship has sailed. I'm calling because someone needed to say it. You were right. About everything. And I'm sorry. Thank you for saying that, Maya replied. I mean it. It takes courage to admit when you're wrong. Not as much courage as it takes to walk away from $3 billion, Richard said. I've been in business for 30 years, and I've never seen anything like what you did last night. Everyone's talking about it. You're a symbol now. For something important. I didn't want to be a symbol, Maya said honestly. I just wanted respect. I know. And that's exactly why you deserve it. He paused. For what it's worth, I've asked Jessica to step down from all company positions. She's out. Completely. It won't fix what happened, but it's a start. That must have been a difficult conversation, Maya said. It was overdue by about 10 years. Richard sighed. I let my family's behavior slide for too long because it was easier than confronting it. I enabled cruelty by ignoring it. That's on me. After they hung up, Patricia looked at Maya with tears in her eyes. Do you know what you did? She asked. I canceled a contract, Maya said simply. No. Patricia shook her head. You changed the conversation. Every CEO in the country is talking about workplace dignity right now. Every board meeting is discussing behavioral standards. Every company is reviewing their ethics policies. You didn't just stand up for yourself. You stood up for everyone who's ever been treated like they don't matter. Maya felt the weight of those words. She'd acted on principle, on instinct, on a mother's lessons about self-worth. She hadn't planned to start a movement. But sometimes the most powerful changes come from the simplest acts. From one person saying, "No, not to me. Not anymore." 3 months later, Maya stood in front of a packed auditorium at Harvard Business School. She'd been invited to give a keynote speech about leadership, ethics, and that night in Miami that had changed everything. She looked out at the sea of faces, students, professors, business leaders, all waiting to hear from the woman who'd walked away from billions. "They told me I'd regret it," Maya began, her voice steady and clear. "After I walked out of that gala, after I terminated the Anderson deal, so many people told me I'd destroyed my career, that I'd acted emotionally, impulsively, that I'd let my pride cost me everything." She paused, letting the words hang in the air. They were wrong about almost all of that, but they were right about one thing. She smiled. "It did cost me something. It cost me access to rooms I no longer want to be in. It cost me relationships with people whose values don't align with mine. It cost me the approval of those who think money matters more than humanity." She clicked to the next slide, showing the viral image from that night. Her standing calmly, wine on her dress, phone in her hand. "But here's what I gained," Maya continued. "I gained self-respect that no amount of money could buy. I gained a team that trusts me to lead with integrity. I gained partnerships with companies that share my values. And I gained something I never expected, a voice." The audience was completely silent, hanging on every word. "Since that night, my company has tripled in value. We've signed deals worth over $10 billion. We've been named one of the best places to work in America. But those aren't the messages that matter to me most." She clicked again, showing screenshots of emails and messages. "These are from a single mother who said watching me stand up for myself gave her the courage to leave an abusive workplace. This one is from a young entrepreneur who almost gave up on his dreams because he didn't feel like he belonged. This is from a teenage girl who wrote that she used to think success meant making people like you. But now she understands it means being someone you can be proud of." Maya's voice thickened with emotion. "That's the real return on investment. Not the dollars. The dignity restored. The courage inspired. The conversations changed." She looked out at the audience. "Let me tell you something I've learned. True power doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need to humiliate others to feel strong. It doesn't demand respect through fear or wealth. True power is quiet. It's certain. It acts with purpose and lets the results speak." A hand went up in the audience. A young woman, probably early 20s. "Ms. Chun, did you know what would happen when you made that call? Did you plan it?" Maya smiled. "I planned to protect my values. The rest just followed. See, I didn't have an elaborate revenge scheme. I had a boundary, and I'd prepared my team to enforce it if it was ever crossed. We'd built ethics clauses into all our major contracts specifically because I refused to tie my company to organizations that didn't share our standards." Another question. "But weren't you scared? Walking away from that much money?" "Terrified," Maya admitted honestly. "But I was more scared of waking up one day and not recognizing the person I'd become. Money is important. Business is important. But if you lose yourself getting them, what's the point?" She clicked to a new slide, a photo of her mother taken years ago, smiling despite tired eyes. "My mother cleaned houses for 20 years. She scrubbed toilets for families that never learned her name. And you know what she told me? She said, 'Baby, they can pay me to clean their floors, but they can't pay me to bow my head. Keep your back straight and your eyes forward. Nobody owns your dignity unless you sell it.'" Maya's voice broke slightly. "I didn't sell mine. Not for $3 billion. Not for all the money in the world." The audience erupted in applause, a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. When it finally quieted, Maya continued, "I want to be clear about something. This isn't a story about me being special or heroic. I'm not. I'm just someone who reached a breaking point and decided my peace was more valuable than a partnership. But what happened afterward? That's about all of us." She gestured to the audience. "It's about what we choose to accept, what we choose to tolerate, what we decide is worth our silence." Every day, in offices and boardrooms and conference calls around the world, people are faced with smaller versions of what happened to me. Maybe it's a comment that crosses a line. Maybe it's being overlooked for a promotion you earned. Maybe it's watching someone else get mistreated and wondering if you should speak up. She leaned forward, her voice intimate despite the large room. Here's what I learned. Silence isn't just the absence of sound. It's a choice. And sometimes, your silence is interpreted as agreement, as acceptance, as permission to continue. A professor raised his hand. Ms. Chun, some would argue that in business, you have to pick your battles. That not every slight deserves a nuclear response. How do you respond to that? I agree completely, Maya said. You do have to pick your battles. But here's the key, you have to actually pick them. Too many people never pick any battles at all. They let things slide and slide and slide until one day they look up and realize they've slid right out of their own self-respect. She walked to the edge of the stage. What happened that night wasn't about a glass of wine. It was about a pattern, a culture, a system that says some people matter more than others. And yes, my response was severe. But it was proportional to what was really happening. Jessica Anderson didn't just spill wine. She tried to erase me, to reduce everything I'd built to a joke for her entertainment. And here's the thing nobody talks about, Maya continued. If I had stayed quiet, if I had just wiped off the wine and smiled and finished the evening, what would I have taught the world? I would have taught every young person watching that success means swallowing your dignity. That making it to the top means accepting humiliation as the cost of entry. I couldn't do that. Another student spoke up. But Ms. Chun, you were in a position of power. You had a successful company, resources, options. What about people who don't have that privilege? Who can't afford to walk away? Maya nodded seriously. That's the most important question anyone's asked today. You're absolutely right. I had options many people don't have. I had financial security. I had a strong company. I had leverage. And that's exactly why I had to use it. She clicked to a new slide showing a quote. With great power comes great responsibility. I know it's from a comic book, Maya smiled. But it's true. If those of us who have power don't use it to set new standards, to show what's possible, to draw lines in the sand, then what good is our power? We're just perpetuating the same broken system that hurt us on our way up. I walked away because I could, Maya said firmly. And I walked away so that maybe someday others won't have to. Because maybe now companies will think twice before allowing that kind of behavior. Maybe executives will remember that viral video before they make a cruel joke. Maybe someone will get treated with basic respect because a corporation doesn't want to be the next Anderson Corporation. The room was absolutely still. You could feel the weight of her words settling over everyone. Let me tell you what happened to the Anderson Corporation, Maya said. Richard Anderson stepped down as CEO 2 months ago. The company has restructured completely, implementing some of the strictest ethical guidelines in the industry. They've created an independent ethics board with real power to investigate complaints. They've donated $50 million to organizations fighting workplace discrimination. She paused. Did they do this because they suddenly found their conscience? Maybe. Maybe not. But they did it because they learned that cruelty has consequences. That the world is watching. That dignity isn't just a nice idea, it's a business imperative. As for Jessica Anderson, Maya's expression softened slightly. She issued a public apology 3 weeks after the incident. I don't know if it was genuine or if it was written by lawyers. But I accepted it. Because this was never about destroying her. It was about refusing to be destroyed. Maya walked back to center stage. Here's what I want you to take from this story. Not that you should blow up every partnership when someone disrespects you. Not that you should make dramatic exits every time you're offended. But that you should know your worth. You should define your boundaries. And when those boundaries are crossed, not by accident, not in confusion, but deliberately and cruelly, you should enforce them. She looked directly into the audience, making eye contact with as many people as she could. Some of you will leave here and build companies. Some will lead teams. Some will manage projects. And all of you will face moments where you have to choose between what's easy and what's right. Between profit and principle. Between going along to get along, or standing up for something that matters. When that moment comes, Maya's voice grew stronger. Remember this. The money you make from compromising your values will never buy back your self-respect. The deals you close by accepting cruelty will haunt you. The success you achieve by being silent when you should speak. That's not success. That's surrender. She clicked to her final slide. It was simple, just text on a dark background. Respect is not negotiable. Dignity is not for sale. Character is not optional. This is my company's unofficial motto now, Maya said. We don't have it in our marketing materials. We don't put it on business cards. But everyone who works with us knows it. Because we live it. Every day. In every decision. Maya took a deep breath. 3 months ago, I walked out of a ballroom with wine on my dress and the weight of a canceled billion-dollar deal on my shoulders. People thought I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. But standing here now, looking at all of you, knowing that my choice sparked conversations in classrooms and boardrooms and living rooms around the world, I know I made exactly the right decision. Because here's the truth they don't teach you in business school, Maya said, her voice dropping to something intimate and powerful. Success isn't just about what you build. It's about who you are while building it. It's not just about the empire you create. It's about whether you can sleep at night in the castle. She smiled, a real smile full of peace and certainty. And I sleep just fine. Because when I look in the mirror, I see someone I'm proud of. Someone my mother would be proud of. Someone who proved that you don't have to sacrifice your soul to succeed. You just have to be willing to sacrifice things that aren't as important as your soul. The audience rose as one, applauding so loudly it echoed off the auditorium walls. But Maya noticed something more meaningful than the applause. She noticed the looks on their faces. Not just admiration or excitement, but determination. Recognition. Like they were making silent promises to themselves about the kind of leaders they would become. After the speech, during the reception, dozens of people approached Maya with their own stories. A professor who'd finally reported harassment she'd endured for years. A student who'd left a toxic internship. An executive who'd restructured his company's entire culture after watching Maya's story. One young woman, probably 22, approached with tears streaming down her face. Ms. Chun, I just wanted to say thank you. I've been in a workplace where my boss, where he makes comments about my appearance, and I've been too scared to say anything because I need the job, and I thought I was being too sensitive, but watching you. Maya took her hands gently. You're not being too sensitive. You're being human, and you deserve better. But I can't just quit like you did. I don't have another job lined up. I don't have. You don't have to do what I did, Maya interrupted softly. My story is just one example. You get to write your own. But whatever you do, please remember that your dignity matters. Document everything. Report it properly. Find allies. Protect yourself. But don't let anyone convince you that accepting mistreatment is the price of success. The young woman nodded, wiping her tears. I'm going to HR on Monday. Good. Maya squeezed her hands. And if you need a reference, a lawyer, or just someone to talk to, here's my direct email. I mean it. Use it. Later that evening, Maya sat in her hotel room, scrolling through social media. The hashtag respect is not negotiable was trending. People were sharing their own stories of standing up to workplace bullying, discrimination, harassment. The movement had grown beyond her. Her phone rang. It was her mother. Hi, Mom. I just watched your speech online. Her mother's voice was thick with emotion. Baby, you made me so proud today. Not because of the business success. Not because of the headlines. But because when you stood on that stage, I saw the little girl I raised. The one who wouldn't let the other kids push her around on the playground. The one who always stood up for what was right, even when it was hard. Maya felt tears prick her eyes. I learned it from you, Mom. Everything I am, I learned from watching you. Maybe, her mother said. But you took it further than I ever could. You built something real. You changed things. You showed the world that having dignity and having success aren't opposites. They're partners. After they hung up, Maya walked to the window and looked out over the city lights. Somewhere down there, in offices and restaurants and homes, people were having conversations about respect, about dignity, about the cost of silence and the power of standing up. She thought about that night in Miami, the wine dripping down her shoulder, the laughter, the moment she made that call. It had seemed so big then, so dramatic, so final. But now she understood it differently. It wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. Because real change doesn't happen in one dramatic moment. It happens in 1,000 small moments that follow. It happens when one person's courage gives another person permission to be courageous too. It happens when a story gets told and retold until it becomes part of how we understand what's possible. Maya Chin didn't set out to become a symbol. She just set out to protect her dignity. But sometimes when you stand up for yourself at the exact right moment, in the exact right way, you accidentally stand up for everyone. And that wine-stained dress? She never threw it away. It hangs in her office now in a glass case with a small plaque beneath it that reads, "The most expensive outfit I ever wore. Cost $3 billion. Worth priceless." Employees and visitors see it and smile, understanding immediately. It's not a trophy. It's a reminder, a promise, a commitment that in this company, in this space, dignity is the currency that matters most. 6 months after that night, Maya received an invitation to speak at the United Nations about business ethics and human dignity in the workplace. A year later, her story was taught in business schools across the globe. 2 years later, the Maya Chin Clause, provisions protecting dignity and prohibiting discriminatory behavior, had been adopted by over 3,000 corporations worldwide. But the moment that meant the most to Maya came on an ordinary Tuesday in her office, when a young employee knocked on her door. "Ms. Chin, I just wanted to tell you something. I almost didn't apply to work here because I didn't think I was good enough. I came from a poor background, and I thought places like this weren't for people like me. But then I heard your story, and I realized that maybe, just maybe, there was a place in business for someone who values principles as much as profits." Maya smiled. "There is, and you're in it." The young employee grinned and left, and Maya turned back to her work. But she felt it, that warm, solid feeling of knowing you did the right thing. Not because it was easy, not because it was profitable, but because it was right. And in the end, that's the only measure that matters. Because dignity isn't just about how you stand when everyone's watching. It's about how you stand when you're alone in front of the mirror. It's about whether you can look yourself in the eye and say, "I didn't compromise who I am." Maya could say that every single day. And that, more than any billion-dollar deal, was the real success story. The end. Remember, respect is not negotiable. Dignity is not for sale. And you, yes, you are worth standing up for.